Joining us now, DNC Vice Chair David Hogg.
I will defer to the former DNC member on this.
I am a former DNC member. Thank you for being here tonight. Okay. I want to play Malcolm Kenyatta, a piece of what he put out on social media yesterday and today. Take a listen to the other vice chair of the DNC, Kenyatta.
We have spent now weeks talking about one person, not about what the party needs to do, but talking about one person. And now, as this new thing has happened, the press is rushing to take David's word for it, that this is yet another way that people are trying to get him. David knows that's bull. I refuse to sit here and allow the press to continue to push this narrative as if I'm not sitting right here, and as if I didn't get way more votes than he got, and as if I haven't been doing the work of trying to rebuild this party.
What's your response to that?
Look, I have an enormous amount of respect for Malcolm Kenyatta as a vice chair of the DNC. Obviously, there's disagreements that we have. What I would say is you were right. This challenge came months, right after the election happened in the first place. What I would also say, though, is that in conversations that I've had with members of the DNC, the consensus prior to our announcement of the primary challenge effort was that this effort to redo the elections was not going to make it past the committee. It was not going to move forward. That was the consensus of many of the members that I have talked to.
On the Credentials Committee? Well,
specifically around the DNC when they had conversations about this. And the belief now is that this is a useful opportunity that unfortunately has caught up Vice Chair Kenyatta as well in it to use a simple majority in order to essentially vote me out instead of the two-thirds or the two-thirds requirement that they would have to officially remove me as an officer, because the consensus prior to this was that this was not going to move forward, but they believe, many of the members that I have talked to, that it is moving forward as a convenient way to remove me effectively with a simple majority.
I just want to make one statement, and then I'll defer to the chairman and Alicia. I think that there are a lot of people that would say your argument is an argument that, like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Given everything that's happening, they are trying to get him out. But as you well know, the DNC, i.e. the officers in the building, they do not dictate what the membership does in terms of these committee hearings. And so if the feeling of the people on the committee has in fact changed, it's because that's what the membership does feel like. And so I think that you're conflating two things. How Chairman Martin and maybe some of the other officers feel about what you have taken up in terms of challenging, getting involved in primaries, but not primaries that would cost a race. And then this thing here with the apportionment of the rules.
But it's also the membership. And what I would say to that is I believe when I talked to a member just about an hour ago about this, she said to me, David, I honestly believe if they came to the committee right now and said we have candidates A, B, and C in this whole situation and they left our names off of it, that this never would have gone through in the first place. And that's the broader issue. It's not specifically that, the officers are playing a role here. It's that people believe that there is a change in faith of what has happened here because of what we're doing in these primary challenges. And ultimately, what I think we need to be centering is what are we doing to address the fact that we have a 27% approval rating, despite the fact that we have a president that is literally selling a cryptocurrency from the White House that foreign governments are buying in order to bribe him, essentially. He literally just took a $400 million jet, and there is so much more to focus on in that regard in particular. And of course, there are going to be disagreements. We're Democrats. But I think that's one of the things that makes our party strong, is that we can have our disagreements, but ultimately we're all on the same side here of building the strongest party possible to defeat Republicans.
I appreciate the whole idea of what makes your party strong. But it also, I think, creates an unnecessary narrative around a lot of stuff, to your very point, of what you've been arguing folks should be focused on. And the process is about, hey, let's take a look at who we're elevating out there that can win in this new environment that's being created. At the core of this, David, is the fact that, as I understand it from some of the members, is that as an official of the party, the idea that you would be behind your particular PAC would be in a position to then engage in primaries to go challenge an incumbent. As a sitting member of the DNC, there's some folks that have issues around that, which, yeah, I can see that argument. But I can tell you that as a party official, and I don't know if the DNC has this thing called a Rule 11, where the party at the state level at least picks winners and losers in primaries, where they say, we want Simone over Joe.
At the state level, yeah.
So you do have that kind of an effort. So how is, I guess my question is...
Quietly, yes, not officially.
Let me add this in as well. This is a really important point. This is not unprecedented. There have been vice chairs before with leadership PACs that have been involved in primaries, that have endorsed in primaries. And my concern here is that even if this rule does pass, it's going to be selectively enforced, where when the president appoints a member of Congress in the future that has a leadership PAC, and then they give to somebody, either an incumbent or a challenger incumbent through that leadership PAC, I don't believe that we're going to say to that member of Congress, I'm sorry, you can't be a member here anymore because you're violating this rule.
Can you clarify, though, which vice chairs have the PACs? Which
we had Gretchen Whitmer
vice
and Tammy
chairs?
Duckworth that were vice chairs that had PACs. And there are also current sitting members of the DNC that are officers that endorsed when they were vice chairs.
Who? And then I guess because what I have been on the phone with DNC members for the last 2 days, and people are, one, they feel like this is a distraction. They feel like what you did is a distraction in terms of your announcement. You could have just quietly did it. They're like, why he got to make an announcement? So that's one point of contention you can respond to if you'd like. But also, a lot of people feel like you're trying to have it both ways. Even though there are people a lot of people also agree with you. They agree that members just are not entitled to a seat. Members of Congress should not be entitled to a seat. The people own these seats. But people say that you want to have it both ways. You want to be both judge and jury. And you are cherry picking examples, people have said to me, to underscore your position. And if you really take a deep look, like I worked for Senator Sanders, and you know, I do remember 2015, 2016. There were people that really do feel as though that the DNC rigged the election. And I had to go out after we lost at the convention and say, I worked for Senator Sanders. Somebody rigged the election. He didn't win enough votes from black and brown people. But the reality was there were people within the Democratic National Committee at the highest levels who definitely had their fingers and thumbs on the scale for Secretary Clinton. And so I don't understand.
And let me say this much. If we're going to adopt that type of philosophy, that means we can't work with the D-TRIP. We can't work with the DS.
No, but we're talking about the DNC. Let's focus on the DNC.
Because some of the response to what I have been doing has been is that I've proposed that we create an internal firewall in the DNC in order to say, you know what, we understand that there are going to be people in the future that have leadership PACs, that are members of Congress, that are governors and other people. So let's just isolate them so that they don't have any insider information that could have undue influence in these elections. And the response to that has been, well, we can't do that because we're going to work with the DS and the D-TRIP, which famously do get involved in primaries. So my question is this really a matter of philosophy, or is this a way of trying to remove somebody trying to challenge the status quo? That's my question. Because if it really is a matter of philosophy, if they came out here and said right now, no officer, and we will enforce this, that no officer is going to be involved in primaries going forward by any means, but we're going to grandfather the current officers in who ran under the bylaws as they are. The DNC is an organization that is over 170 years old. We have a long list of bylaws that do say specifically you cannot be involved in the presidential primary, because we do have oversight over that, and I think that makes total sense. But if we're going to say that we can't have any role in primaries whatsoever, we need our state parties to be held to that same standard, which I don't believe is going to happen. And we also need to make sure that we're holding our sister committees to that same standard, which I also don't think is going to happen.
I agree with the distraction part. I think the distraction, though, is that you came in and you upset the apple cart.
Mm-hmm. And it needed to be.
You came in and you said, okay, this is the party that's talked generational shift. Let's back it up. Mm-hmm. And now let's begin to engage. What makes your position tough is that you're at the table as an officer of the party. But here's the thing. If there are examples of the party allowing that to happen in space in other areas, then what is it about this effort that sets off so many fire alarms?
What I do know about Gretchen Whitmer's PAC and Tammy Duckworth's PAC is that they did not. They didn't elevate particular Democratic candidates in Democratic primaries. They gave across the board to Democratic elected officials, my understanding. And Tulsi Gabbard, who at one point in time was a vice chair of the DNC, y'all, she endorsed Senator Sanders in the presidential primary, and she stepped down. She had to give up her seat to do that.
But what is it?
So what I'm saying is, I think that effort is different. That's what people are. That is what everyone is saying to me. That what you're doing is different than what's been done before. What's your? answer to that?
My response is that I think what I'm doing that's different from before is I'm challenging the status quo in a direct way and head on. And that really scares people. But frankly, I think right now, nobody should be comfortable when our country is in a moment of crisis. And I think that there is far too much comfortability across the board. And we need to make sure that we are electing the best people possible and in our own party, using democracy to show how we're fighting to give you the best person to represent you possible, regardless of whether or not you're in a purple district or a very blue district. And ultimately, it's not me or any member of the DNC that is deciding these elections. It's the voters in these districts. And all we're trying to say here is let's give people the option when our party has a record low approval rating to say, here's what we're going to do, here's how we're trying to address that, and here's how we're trying to use democracy ourselves to build the strongest Democratic Party possible so that we can get back to giving people an alternative vision for our country. That is not simply saying that we're against Donald Trump, because here's the question that I would pose to the people that don't agree with this. If this is not the answer,
What is?
How are we going to address that approval rating? I know this is controversial, but look, we are not challenging people that are in competitive seats that could risk us losing a majority in state legislatures or in Congress, and we're only challenging Democratic members in safe seats for the U.S. House. That's it. And we're also going to be supporting people running in competitive races. And what I'll tell you, what I'm looking at, Simone, is not who is calling me saying, oh, my God, this is so great what you're doing necessarily from inside of D.C. What I'm looking at is who are the young people? What are they saying? And I have never had so many young people come up to me to say thank you for what you're doing. I was losing faith in politics. I was losing faith in the Democratic Party, but you've helped to reinstill it. And that's what matters here. We can't have a future of our party when we are losing vote share with every single demographic except the elderly and people with PhDs, basically.